It was a heavy moment in my parents' room, with my father battling stage 4 esophageal cancer. We were having one of those heart-to-heart talks, the kind you have when time feels like it's slipping away faster than you can catch it. But then, in the midst of our conversation, something strange happened. A chill ran down my spine, and I felt a presence behind me. Without thinking, I glanced toward the living room doorway and saw it. A figure standing about 4 feet 6 inches tall, entirely black, peeking around the corner with hands gripping the doorframe. My heart raced as I charged at it, but in the blink of an eye, it retreated back around the door. Breathless, I reached the doorway, but there was nothing there. It was like the figure had vanished into thin air. I returned to my father's side, bewildered by what I had just experienced. When I recounted the encounter to him, he looked at me with a mixture of concern and confusion. He hadn't seen anything. But as the days passed and others stayed with us during my father's last moments, more stories emerged. They too claimed to have seen the mysterious figure, lurking in the shadows, always just out of reach. Even my mother, in her moments of solitude, encountered it several times in various places around the house. As my father's condition worsened, so did the sightings. It was as if the figure was drawn to the energy of his illness, feeding off the fear and uncertainty that filled the air. And then, just like that, he passed away, leaving behind a lingering sense of emptiness and loss. In the days that followed, the figure was nowhere to be seen. It had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared, leaving us to wonder what it was and why it had chosen to reveal itself to us in our time of need. Despite the passing of time, I find myself drawn to true ghost stories on Reddit, reading them compulsively twice a year. It's like I'm searching for answers, trying to make sense of the unexplained phenomena that seem to follow me wherever I go. Maybe it's because every home I've lived in has had its own resident spirit, a reminder that there are forces in this world that we can't always see or understand. But the story doesn't end there. No, the shadows of the past continue to haunt me, whispering secrets and stirring up memories long forgotten. It's as if they're trying to tell me something, to warn me of dangers yet unseen. I remember one summer evening, not long after my father's passing, when I was home alone. The house was quiet, too quiet, and I found myself drawn to the living room, where my father used to sit and watch TV. As I entered the room, a chill ran down my spine, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. That's when I saw it. The figure, standing in the corner of the room, its dark form blending seamlessly with the shadows. I froze in place, unable to move, unable to look away. It felt like an eternity passed before the figure finally disappeared, leaving me shaken and terrified. From that day on, I knew I couldn't ignore the presence that lingered in our home. There was something dark and malevolent lurking in the shadows, something that wanted to harm us. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, that grief had clouded my mind and conjured up these visions. But deep down, I knew the truth. As the months went by, the sightings became more frequent, more intense. I would catch glimpses of the figure out of the corner of my eye, lurking in the darkness just beyond my line of sight. It was like it was taunting me, playing games with my mind. But it wasn't just me who felt its presence. My mother, too, began to see the figure, encountering it in the most unexpected places. At the foot of her bed, in the hallway, even outside in the backyard. It was like it was everywhere and nowhere all at once, a shadow that defied logic and reason. We tried to ignore it, to go about our lives as if nothing was wrong, but the fear gnawed at us, eating away at our sanity until we couldn't take it anymore. That's when we decided to seek help, to reach out to someone who could make sense of the madness that had consumed our lives. We found a paranormal investigator online, a man who claimed to have experience dealing with entities of all kinds. He arrived at our house armed with an arsenal of equipment, EMF meters, infrared cameras, voice recorders, all in an effort to capture evidence of the spirit that haunted us. For days, he scoured every inch of our home, searching for signs of paranormal activity. But try as he might, he couldn't find anything conclusive. It was like the figure knew we were onto it. and it retreated deeper into the shadows, hiding from our prying eyes. Frustrated and defeated, the investigator left us with more questions than answers. He couldn't explain what we were experiencing, couldn't offer us any solace or reassurance. And so, we were left to fend for ourselves, to confront the darkness that lurked within our own home. But as the days turned into weeks, something strange began to happen. The sightings became less frequent, less intense. It was like the figure was losing its grip on our reality, fading into the background like a distant memory. And then one day, it was gone. Just like that, the shadow that had haunted us for so long vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers of its existence. We never found out what it was or why it had chosen us, but in a way, I think we were better off not knowing. Life returned to normal, or as normal as it could be, after everything we had been through. We moved on, but the memories of those dark days lingered. A reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that lurks just beyond the edge of our reality. And so, I continue to read true ghost stories on Reddit, searching for answers, searching for closure. Maybe one day, I'll find the truth hidden within the pages of those chilling tales. Until then, I'll keep searching, keep hoping, keep fighting against the shadows of the past that threaten to consume me once more.
A few years ago, I found myself traveling through Nebraska with my ex-boyfriend. Now, if you've ever been to Nebraska, you know it's mostly known for its endless cornfields stretching as far as the eye can see. Anyway, we were cruising along, following the directions from OnStar, when we somehow ended up off the interstate. We hit this random four-way stop in the middle of nowhere, and right smack dab in the center was this car that looked like it had seen better days. It was just sitting there, like it had broken down or something. Now, I don't know about you, but that seemed mighty suspicious to me. I told my ex we should just keep on driving, not even stop to give it a second glance. And at first, he was all on board with that plan. But then he goes and slows down at the stop sign, like he's about to pull over. I swear my heart skipped a beat. Before I could even protest, 3 dudes come out of that busted car like they were waiting for us. My gut was screaming at me to get out of there, and I practically begged my ex to hit the gas and get us the heck out of Dodge. Luckily, he listened to me, and as we peeled out of there, I stole a quick glance in the rearview mirror. And let me tell you, what I saw chilled me to the bone. One of those guys was waving around something that looked an awful lot like a weapon. I couldn't tell if it was a machete or a gun, but either way, it wasn't good news. As we sped away, more of those creeps started crawling out of the cornfields near the car. It was like they had set some kind of trap, and we narrowly avoided walking right into it. I don't even want to think about what might have happened if we hadn't trusted our instincts and gotten the heck out of there when we did. After that close call, my ex and I were both shaken up. We couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right about the whole situation. Who were those guys? What were they doing out there in the middle of nowhere with a broken down car? We debated calling the police, but in the end, we decided against it. What would we even tell them? That we saw some sketchy dudes by the side of the road? It didn't seem like enough to warrant getting law enforcement involved. But as we continued on our journey, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. It was like a shadow hanging over us, following us wherever we went. I couldn't help but wonder what might have happened if we hadn't been lucky enough to escape that trap. Months went by, and we eventually put the whole ordeal behind us. Life moved on, as it tends to do, but every now and then I still find myself thinking about that night in Nebraska. It's a reminder that sometimes it's better to trust your instincts and get the heck out of Dodge before it's too late. It's funny how routines become a part of your life without you even noticing, like brushing your teeth before bed or saying goodnight to your kid. For me, it was the latter, a nightly ritual that I never skipped. See, my son had trouble sleeping if I didn't pop my head into his room to say goodnight. It was our thing, a silent tradition that we both cherished. One night, just like any other, I headed to my son's room to tuck him in. The lamp cast a soft glow illuminating his small space, but something felt off as I stepped inside. My son was lying in bed, his face lit up by a grin that seemed to stretch from ear to ear. Now, don't get me wrong, my son was a happy kid, but this grin was different. It sent shivers down my spine. "You okay, buddy?" I asked, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling creeping over me. He nodded, that grin still plastered on his face.
"Daddy, check for monsters under my bed,"
he said, his voice oddly cheerful. I chuckled, thinking it was just a game. So I got down on my knees and peeked under the bed. But what I saw there made my blood run cold. It wasn't a monster lurking in the darkness, it was my son. Well, not exactly my son, but a pale, trembling doppelganger of him. My heart raced as I realized something was terribly wrong. "Daddy, there's someone on my bed!" the real voice of my son whispered, filled with fear. I scrambled to my feet, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. How could there be two of them? Which one was real, and who or what was lying on his bed? My son's terrified eyes begged for answers, but I had none to give. All I could do was grab him and flee from that room, leaving behind the eerie, grinning imposter. As we huddled together in the safety of the living room, I tried to make sense of what had just happened. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt like a nightmare. How could such a thing be real? Days passed, but the memory of that night lingered like a dark shadow over our home. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us, waiting to strike when we least expected it. And as much as I wanted to protect my son, I knew I couldn't keep him safe forever. No. In the end, we made the difficult decision to leave our home behind. We packed up our belongings and moved far away, hoping to leave the darkness behind us. But the memory of the grinning boy haunted me, refusing to fade away. Months turned into years, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still lurking in the shadows. My son grew older, but the fear never left him. He would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, his eyes wide with terror. I tried to convince myself that it was just his imagination, that the grinning boy was nothing more than a nightmare. But deep down, I knew the truth. The darkness had followed us, and it would never let us go. Even now, as I sit in our new home, surrounded by the warmth of my family, I can't help but feel a sense of unease. The grinning boy may be gone, but his memory lives on, a reminder of the horrors we left behind. And as much as I try to forget, I know that some nightmares never truly end. During my college years, I resided in an apartment adjacent to my best friends. We were inseparable, spending countless hours together, sharing laughter, tears, and everything in between. But one evening stands out in my memory, a night that sent shivers down our spines and left us questioning the nature of the world around us. It was a typical Friday night, and my friend had joined me to watch a horror film. The title escapes me now, lost in the fog of memory, but I remember the feeling of anticipation as we settled in, ready to be scared out of our wits. As the movie played out on the screen, we were drawn into its dark and twisted world. The tension mounted with each passing minute until finally a scene unfolded that sent chills down our spines. A ghost appeared, its spectral form triggering a cacophony of pots and pans clattering to the ground. The on-screen characters were petrified, and so were we. But what happened next sent a shiver down my spine. In an eerie coincidence, mere moments after the pots and pans fell on screen, my own collection of kitchenware tumbled from atop my refrigerator, creating a thunderous din that echoed through the apartment. My friend and I froze, our hearts pounding in our chests as we exchanged wide-eyed glances. Had we imagined it? Was it just a trick of the mind brought on by the tension of the movie? Or had something truly supernatural occurred? Alarmed and unnerved, we hastily switched on the lights, bringing an abrupt end to our movie night. We moved quickly to tidy up the kitchenware, our hands shaking as we tried to make sense of what had just happened. But deep down, we both knew that this was no ordinary coincidence. We decided then and there to let that night fade into unspoken history, a strange and unsettling chapter in our lives that we were both eager to forget. But try as we might, the memory lingered, haunting us like a ghostly echo of the past. In the days that followed, we tried to rationalize what had occurred, searching for logical explanations to ease our troubled minds. But the more we thought about it, the more we realized that some mysteries are better left unsolved. And so we moved on with our lives. But the memory of that night remained etched in our minds, a reminder of the inexplicable forces that lurk just beyond the edge of our understanding. We may never know what truly happened that night, but one thing is certain. We'll never forget the chilling sensation of those falling pots and pans and the fear that gripped us in their wake. It was a typical night at the gas station, the kind of late shift that stretched on endlessly, the only company being the hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional rumble of passing cars. I was stationed behind the counter, counting down the minutes until my shift ended and I could finally retreat to the comfort of my own bed. But then, just as the clock struck 3 a.m., something happened that shattered the monotony of the night and sent a chill down my spine. A car pulled up to one of the pumps, its headlights cutting through the darkness like a beacon in the night. I watched as the driver got out, a shadowy figure in the dim light, and began pumping gas. At first, everything seemed perfectly ordinary, but then in the blink of an eye, it happened. The car and the driver vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but an eerie silence and a sense of disbelief. I rubbed my eyes, convinced I was seeing things, but when I looked again, the pump was empty, the car gone without a trace. I stood frozen behind the counter, my mind racing as I tried to process what I had just witnessed. Had I imagined it? Was it some kind of trick of the light? Or had something truly inexplicable occurred right before my eyes? Shaken by the experience, I couldn't wait to tell my boss the next day. As soon as she arrived, I pulled her aside and recounted the strange events of the previous night. To my surprise, her face turned pale, and she listened intently as I described the vanishing act that had unfolded before me. But then, to my astonishment, she revealed that she had witnessed the exact same thing. A car pulling up to the same pump, with the same driver pumping gas, only to disappear into thin air right before her eyes. We were both left speechless, trying to make sense of what we had seen. As the days passed, the memory of that night haunted me, lingering in the back of my mind like a shadowy specter. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than met the eye, that there was some deeper mystery waiting to be uncovered. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I began to delve into the history of the gas station, searching for clues that might explain the bizarre events of that fateful night. But the more I searched, the more elusive the truth became, slipping through my fingers like smoke on the wind. I interviewed customers, reviewed security footage, even consulted with local historians, but no one could provide a satisfactory explanation for what had happened. It was like the vanishing act had never happened at all, a figment of my imagination that defied rational explanation. But deep down, I knew there was something more to it, something lurking just beyond the edge of my understanding. And so I continued to search, determined to unravel the mystery of the vanishing car and its mysterious driver. As the weeks turned into months, I became obsessed with the case, spending countless hours poring over every detail, searching for any clue that might shed light on the truth. But no matter how hard I tried, the answers remained elusive, tantalizingly out of reach. Then, just when I was on the brink of giving up hope, a breakthrough occurred. A local historian uncovered an old newspaper article detailing a similar incident that had occurred at the gas station decades earlier. According to the article, a car had pulled up to the pump late one night only to vanish into thin air, leaving behind nothing but questions and speculation. Armed with this new information, I redoubled my efforts, determined to solve the mystery once and for all. But as I delved deeper into the history of the gas station, I uncovered a dark and disturbing secret, one that had been buried for decades, hidden from prying eyes. It turned out that the gas station was built on the site of an old graveyard, a final resting place for the souls of the deceased. According to local legend, the spirits of the dead still roam the grounds, their restless souls trapped between this world and the next. Could it be that the vanishing car was somehow connected to the restless spirits that haunted the gas station? Had the driver unwittingly stumbled upon something beyond their comprehension? Something that defied the laws of nature and reason? Armed with this new theory, I returned to the gas station, determined to confront whatever malevolent force lurked within its walls. But as I stepped through the door, I felt a chill run down my spine, and I knew that I was not alone. In the dim light of the gas station, I saw it. The figure of a man standing by the pump, his eyes burning with an otherworldly intensity. I tried to speak, to ask him what he wanted, but no words would come. It was like I was frozen in place, unable to move, unable to look away. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished, leaving behind nothing but a sense of unease and a feeling of dread that lingered long after it was gone. In the end, I may never know the truth behind the vanishing car and its mysterious driver. But one thing is certain, the gas station holds secrets that are best left undisturbed, mysteries that defy explanation and challenge the very fabric of our reality. And as long as it stands, the shadows will continue to whisper their secrets, beckoning the curious and the brave to uncover the truth that lies hidden within. Working late nights at IHOP was never dull. The smell of pancakes wafting through the air, the chatter of customers, and the clinking of plates created a bustling atmosphere. But beneath the surface, there was an eerie undercurrent that sent shivers down my spine. It all started with the mysterious sounds emanating from the kitchen, spatulas clanking, pots rattling, even when nobody was there. At first, I brushed it off as the normal noises of a busy kitchen, but as time went on, I began to suspect there was something more sinister at play. The eerie atmosphere was compounded by a chilling tale from the past. A cook had been shot and killed during a robbery before my time there. The tragic incident cast a shadow over the restaurant, leaving a lingering sense of unease in its wake. One night, as I was closing up the kitchen, I caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure lurking in the back. My heart pounded in my chest as I cautiously approached, expecting to find the cook working late. But when I reached the spot where the figure had been, there was nobody there. I was alone in the empty kitchen with nothing but the echo of my own footsteps to keep me company. Confused and unnerved, I stepped outside to catch my breath, only to be startled by the sight of the cook sitting there, smoking a cigarette. I blinked in disbelief, trying to reconcile the image before me with the shadowy figure I had seen moments earlier. But there was no denying it. The cook was very much alive and well, leaving me baffled by the unexplained presence in the kitchen. As I confided in my coworkers about what I had seen, I was surprised to learn that I wasn't the only one experiencing strange occurrences. One coworker recounted feeling as though she had been pushed while working in the kitchen, though I couldn't speak to something I hadn't witnessed myself. These eerie occurrences left us all on edge, wondering if the tragic events of the past were somehow lingering in the present, haunting the halls of our workplace. As we went about our duties, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that unseen eyes were following our every move. But despite the lingering sense of unease, we continued to show up for our shifts, determined to carry on with our lives despite the ghostly presence that seemed to haunt the kitchen. And as we worked together, supporting each other through the long nights and strange occurrences, we found solace in the camaraderie that comes from facing the unknown together.